So check on in. See the blue skies today? Yeah, it's a rarity we have blue skies, right? Hey girl, Jamaica, what up? What up? What up, Jamaica's in the house? Book, book, book. Book, book, book. Come on in, y'all. Hey AJ, how you doing, love? Okay. Hello, my lovies. Chattanooga's in the house. Tennessee, I know you guys got hit, so we're going to talk about what they did to you because the weather wars are real. Is so and so a Fed? I can't, I, you know, I know many of you remember the prediction I made, and it wasn't my prediction. It was about the South Carolina and the Carolinas being hit with those geo-engineered storms. So we'll kind of talk about, hey, On's in the mother freaking house. Baltimore, Georgia. Hey, so we're going to talk about that prediction that was made by the Intellis, and the Intellis got it from the Dark Cabal. So that was definitely a geo-engineered storm, allegedly. Okay, so we'll talk about that. I'll wait until we get to 500 so we can start. I know I saw the bio plant, and that wasn't the only one, Queen. It wasn't the only plant. Right before the geo-engineered storm, the storm of mass destruction that was 540 miles long, you do know there were two other explosions that happened. One was in some part of Texas, I forgot the name, and there was a part of also Ohio again. So definitely there's some chemicalization. We're going to talk about the false flags. We're going to talk about the geoengineered weather as opposed to the pole shift, which is also going. So let me just put my greatest condolences for everyone in North Carolina and the Carolinas and Florida, Tennessee as well, who had lost their homes, who were a victim of your governmental systems sending geoengineered storms towards you. And it's my opinion, and it's just an opinion. I would sue the heck out of the federal government. But, that's allegedly if it is them that did it. But you know what I think. Okay, so we'll wait until we get to 500. So today we're going to talk about the pole shift. Hey, Del Marche. We're going to talk about the pole shift. We're going to talk about the bioengineered mosquitoes from hell. We're going to talk about the NPCs, that are, basically coming out of they're going to be, some of them are being deleted, okay? And what else were we supposed to talk about? We're going to talk about the fake moon, right? The fake moon that they told us was going to show up and never showed up. I guess the Chinois didn't have the technology up and running, so I guess they're delayed. What else? What else I said we're going to talk about in the title? All right, so come on in. And, the prediction was correct, and I wish it wasn't correct. And it was not my intel, y'all. It was intel I was delivering from a young lady who talked about that South Carolina, the Carolinas was going to be hit the hardest with one of the biggest geoengineered hurricanes ever, and it was going to take out the coastlines of Florida. Now, when I told you this a while ago, she said it would happen on the 15th, but, I put it on the calendar. I talked to y'all, or maybe I told the Zombies. Maybe I told y'all and the Zombies. Sometimes I give you things and I don't realize. I just tell everybody. And so I told you that this young lady had made the prediction, but she didn't make the prediction based on being psychic. She got the intel from the Dark Cabal, the bastards of mass destruction. So she got it from them. But I put on the calendar and I kind of warned my Zombies about it, right? And it didn't happen on the 15th. So I was like, okay. But a storm was brewing. But lo and behold, guess what? It came 10 days later. Okay. And they had some stuff brewing in the sky. So I'll wait until we get to 500. We'll kind of discuss the topic. Okay. I hope everybody's doing well. And I want to send my deepest condolences to a lot of the people who lost some of their lives and homes and unfortunately, the Carolinas, Florida, Tennessee, even Utah was getting it. I mean, it's ridiculous, okay? Yes, because of the lithium deposits in North Carolina. That's why we know it's geoengineered. You know what I mean? You ever watch Avatar? Remember Avatar? They had all that stuff under the tree Awa? Was it Awa? Remember under the tree in Avatar, the Awa tree? And it had all that wonderful deposits underneath that, you know, the colonists wanted. And what did they do? They bombed the heck out of the tree so they can get access to that, to the deposits. Okay? So, unfortunately, your Willy Wonka systems don't love you. They have no loyalty to you. And I hope you know this. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but if you trust in any Willy Wonka system, you are foolish and you will be led down a dark, dark road to the concentration camps that they have ready and waiting for everyone. Okay? So, we'll wait until we get to 500 and then we'll start the topic of discussion. So I hope everybody's okay. You know, so much is happening. It is a beautiful blue day, but you know, I'm living, you know, practically outside the zone a little bit. So, you know, it's like it's an old 70s movie. Some occultist told his assistant to give them lithium to keep the spirits from either attaching to him when he astral traveled. Oh, interesting. Miss Cassiopeia just said something interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Well, yeah, Delmache mentioned that did the storm go through the Trail of Tears and the sundown towns? And also that young man that was hung. Remember the delivery guy, the melanated guy who was hung? What's his name? Remember the young man who was hung and they couldn't figure out what happened to him? He was a delivery man in, what was it, in North Carolina, right? Yeah, so unfortunately, I think it might have hit the towns. Now, remember, you can only receive what you're in alignment with. So you do know, hey, Jumanji, you do know that oh, he was hung. Oh, thank you, Marcus. He was hung in Henderson, North Carolina. Okay. Thank you, Marcus, for sharing that. Okay, we'll wait until we got a little bit more to 500 and then we'll start. It's unfortunate, you know, I think it's kind of laughable that they would even tell people that this man hung himself. You know what I mean? It's just amazing the lies that they make up. And while you guys are obsessed with Sean Combs, and let me say this, Sean Combs is a front. I hope you know that he's on every channel. They got Jaguar Rice on what's his name show. It's so laughable. They're distracting you while they're doing all of these laws. They have sleeper cells all coming in. Everything is a lie, y'all. And I hope that you understand this so that you don't get your feelings hurt. It's like, you know, when your girlfriends tell you that your dude is a piece of garbage, and they tell you because they love you, and it's not because they're trying to hurt you, but they know what's coming down the road, and they tell you this. It's either you accept it or you don't, or you stay and you just stay blinded to the false narrative that your vote is going to mean anything. It is a selection. It's all a selection. It is all a lie. We're in a simulation. The reset is about to happen. Some of you will wake up. Some of you will be recycled back into the simulation to go through another cycle. Okay? So I'm just trying to help you out. I mean, you can have fun while you're here. I'm not saying you should be, I'm not saying you should just, lie down and just roll over until the time is up. I'm saying, if you know that it's a simulation and you understand and understand what this is, you can actually have fun in here. And don't take everything so personal, because it's really not, okay? So, I mean, if you're sitting here doing paperwork because you're trying to be sovereign, you're under mind control. If you're sitting here thinking that your vote is going to make a difference and that either of the candidates is going to do something for you or for yours, you are under mind control. If you think that there is difference between different countries that are heading in the simulation, you are under mind control. If you think Jesus Christ is your personal Lord and Savior, you are under mind control. If you think Muhammad is coming down here to give you 1,000 virgins and that you are going to be in everlasting heaven, you are under mind control. Okay? If you think that Chinese food is still good for you, even though they use tap water with little insects inside of it, little amoebas, you are under mind control. Okay? I'm just saying. We got a couple more until 500, and you know, I'm not dissing anybody. I'm not dissing anybody. I'm just saying, break yourself out of your illusion, your disillusion. I mean, if you keep, the deeper you keep into sleep and the more apathy you have in this simulation, you're going to have more issues. You can have fun. You can have fun. But you really have to take in consideration that this is all a psyop. The whole simulation is a psyop. And if you think of all the greatest video games that you've ever enjoyed, then you can participate in this really just with a level head. Okay, because the game, we're in the finale, so congratulations for everybody who's in the finale. Okay, and I talked about, and it was totally, you know, I came up with the fact that all of the so-called Mandela effects are updates. And that's why when the update happens, which you perceive to be a Mandela effect, it just is an update in the simulation. That's why everything changes, books, names, everything. Oh, we're at 500. All right, y'all. Mark the time. We're at 13:05. We're going to start the topic. Peace to the east, west, north, and the south. This, again, is Fleur Brun coming to you today with numbers, with quite a few topics of discussion. Check on it. Do you imagine I said that for so long? Anyway, so we're going to talk about the pole shift and the simulated program, the geoengineered weather, the mosquitoes of the bioengineered mosquitoes. We're going to talk about the simulated people, Exodus. And also we're going to kind of talk about the fake moon that has still yet to show up because the Chinois failed at giving us another false celestial fixture in the sky. I don't know if their project didn't work. Maybe they just didn't have the proper technology. Maybe those spy balloons didn't really give the right proper measurements, but what have you. So I heard a sound. Okay, so let's talk about the pole shift. So many of you understand and understand, if you've been with me for quite a few years on YouTube, you understand that I have talked to you and spoken about the pole shift for over 15 years. Talked about that during the time after reset. Well, it's kind of part of reset, to be honest. We would go through a geomagnetic shift, a pole shift, where the magnetosphere would shift and it would change its polar the magnetism would change, so it would flip. Okay, it happens all the time. It's If you see records and old maps, you'll actually be able to record the fact that many of the geostorms that happened right before the pole shift, all of the different ley lines shifting and changing, like weather changing from one meridian to another, like somewhere where it's really hot and tropical, having snow, like what's happening in South Africa, where they had a host of snow, which it was I think they hadn't ever recorded this happening before. It also snowed somewhere in the Middle East as well. You're having several cracks. We have a crack that is in the middle of New York City that everyone's ignoring. We have a crack in Kenya. I think Kenya, the middle of Africa, going all the way up. I think it's Kenya, if I'm not mistaken. Someone could correct me. You have multiple shifting of the ley lines, and you're getting a lot of weather that is related to the pole shift, which happens always around reset. Okay, so for many years you can kind of research this. No one talks about it because they want to distract you. Okay, I'm telling you, and there's a few people like Nancy Liger from Zeta Talk. Obviously you've heard of like a lot of your prophets, like Edgar Casey talks about the pole shift. I think Nostradamus brings it up. I think Baba Avenga, who's from the sleeping prophet from Bulgaria, she was blind. She was blinded in an accident. So a lot of them talk about the pole shift, and there's many others who've spoken about it in the esoteric community. They used to, at least, but they've not talked about it because it's been highly hidden. And the way that they keep you distracted, you don't pay attention to the geographical changes that are happening like astronomically right now. Right now, you're noticing that all of your different places, the weather's totally different. Places that normally be a little cool and not normally wet, or now um the weather is, hold on. places that are normally cool are hot now, places that are hot are cool, places that normally would be desert are getting wet. Everything's changing, and because of the pole shift, so everything that was at the bottom goes to the top and top to the bottom. Okay, and the pole shift is not just related to just the geographical changes within the simulation underneath the domes, multiple domes, right? Tiers of domes. It also relates to the pole shift happens to the dynamics, the structural dynamics, social dynamics within the stratosphere, meaning that whoever was at the very bottom switches and goes back up. So it's like duality playing out within within the construct of what happens within the pole shift. Okay, so you can kind of look at this. Remember, it started with if you remember, some of you were with me a long time, so I'll just remind some of you who are just newer to me. I'll remind you of the fact that, do you remember a time when the birds had died? It was 2011. I was online. It was in where was it? Talk about this all the time. Was it in Tennessee? I forgot where it was. Remember, it was like a whole bunch of blackbirds fell from the sky. 2011 was on New Year. It was around New Year's. Okay, so that's the first when you knew that the ionosphere was changing, because remember, birds are connected to sonar, like kind of like, well, they're very connected to the ionosphere. Like they can hear, they don't hear, but they feel the magnetosphere. Like that's what guides them to go north and south. Do you remember? I forgot, where was the birds? God, I talked about it every year. Anyway, it was the first time that we had actually witnessed, those of us who were in the pole shift mindset, we had witnessed something that was changing, and it was affecting the blackbirds. Black, wise, because black is very, very absorbent of radiation. They would be the first barometer of changes that were happening in the ionosphere, and the blackbirds were highly affected by it. Okay, so many of you remember that. Okay, now remember, a year after that to the date, blackbirds again fell out of the sky. Wait, my videos are not matching my voice. Do you guys not hear me properly? Tell me if you can hear me. Okay, okay, okay. It got fixed. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I don't know. Willy Wonka, because I'm going to talk about the graphene coffee too. Okay, so we're talking about the fact that the pole shift has affected the animals. Yes, I saw someone mention the whales. The whales were being beached at one point. I think also 2010 that happened at the end of the year, where the whales were beached. Dolphins also were being affected and shoring themselves, coming on the shorelines as well. So after the 2011 and 2010 with the whales, I'm not sure if it was the pilot whales or was the sperm whales. I'm not sure. I don't remember the whales, but I do remember the year after, 1 year to the date, blackbirds fell out of the sky again. Now, how do we know that this isn't the Willy Wonka system? Because it was cylindrical, meaning that it was pattern based, meaning that because we're under a dome and it's ran by a program, every year it changes and we get exposed to a certain energy, and it usually amplifies. So within that one, it was pilot. Thank you. It was pilot whales. Within that year, another year passed to the year to the date, another group of blackbirds was affected. And why black it matters, for people like, I don't see color. Color matters. Black absorbs a lot of radiation, more so. That's why I tell melanated people you have to be very mindful, because when they send frequency pulse waves out here, it really affects those with more melanin more. Okay, you amplify. Everything is more amplified with you, because remember, black absorbs all spectrums of light. I talked about black being a color, and it's just black and white is actually inverted. It's not the same, but just for the purposes of you understanding what I'm talking about, black absorbs a lot of radiation. Like even when I put my hand on a charger, because I have copper skin, which is a super amplifier. My skin is very copper. It amplifies and usually absorb the radiation. Okay, so I tell brown people, when you engage with technology, And especially if you're plugging in your phone and you're holding it or you're sleeping next to it, you're absorbing all that radiation. And you know, all these weird kind of funguses and, you know, allegedly are appearing when people are getting these weird kind of, the C word, okay? Which, my opinion, is a fungus. Okay, and what does, remember when you watch Fukushima, when you saw what happened in Chernobyl, what did you notice about the fungi on top of those fixtures? You notice that they were eating the radiation, right? So it gets amplified, okay? So it's very important for those of you to pay attention, whether you're lunar or brown or Asian, doesn't matter. But if you have dark hair or you have dark eyes and you have darker skin, you amplify, you take in more radiation than everybody else. Remember the boy who had a hole in his head? Remember they were doing experiments on the boys in Mississippi where they were doing testing on melanated boys, told their parents they were doing some other testing, and the parents didn't know that they were testing these melanated boys for radiation. And one of the boys actually survived, but he had a hole in his head from them giving him so much radiation, because the Willy Wonka was testing to see how much how much radiation melanated people could take before they actually imploded. Okay, so I say this all to say is that right now, normally we get a lot of gamma radiation, which is very healthy for melanated people, for everyone, but especially for melanated people, because we take in gamma radiation like the Hulk, and it makes us stronger. It kind of makes us into X-women and X-men. Like, it really is profoundly ingestible. But one, they're putting pulse frequency waves that are low ELF waves that are more radionic, and like radio frequencies with low frequencies, it really breaks down the body and it feeds the fungi. Okay, and that's why you're seeing people coming up with, you know, okay, let's just say that. I want to keep this video up. Okay, so that being said, just pay attention to as much as you're using phones. And also, I told you already, whenever you have these solar panels on your house, lithium batteries, you don't think lithium is coming up in a very odd way? Lithium batteries, lithium everything. Lithium's in those cars, those geo-engineered cars made by, you know, that Bio Borg himself. He made a car made of a lithium battery, and even in North Carolina, you were seeing these cars because if any seawater touches these cars, they explode. Oh, very good job, Mr. Bioborg yourself, okay? So it's important for you to pay attention to your lithium batteries, things like that, because lithium is going to be part of this conversation. When we talk about the lithium that is actually plentiful under a town in North Carolina, then you're going to realize that the intel I gave you a while ago, talking about that storm that just hit, and oddly enough, North Carolina was hit the hardest. And it was up in the mountains. Like, why would up in the mountains be flooded? You have to think water comes, but it usually funnels downward. That was a 540-mile hurricane going very slow. The trajectory changed and purposefully landed in North Carolina, taking out part of Tennessee, over in the mountains, over on the other side. South Carolina was hit pretty badly, even touching, you know, obviously Tallahassee was hit. A lot of the Florida coastlines on the west side, on Tampa, were hit pretty badly. But why would it purposefully go over? And also Georgia as well had got hit. Now, that intel that the young lady gave was amazing. It was 10 days late, but it was right on time. She was absolutely correct, and she got it from the dark Kabbalist. These were people telling her that they had purposefully going to create one of the biggest hurricanes to take out the Carolinas. So that intel was correct. Just timing was off. Okay, so when we talk about it was being steered towards North Carolina, and oddly enough, there is a town in North Carolina that has a lot of lithium underneath the ground. And there were plans, obviously, to take out, to try to mine that lithium underneath the ground. But of course, people live there. So the townspeople weren't okay with the lithium being dug up. Asheville, thank you, Ashe. The lithium was to be mined, and the townspeople were like, no, heck no. We don't want miners and mines in our town to ruin our wonderful, sweet, quiet town. Well, what did they do? You know, allegedly, the Willy Wonka systems created a geoengineered storm that was 540 miles wide that hit North Carolina the worst. It literally took out roads, it took out houses. How do you have a whole hurricane hitting on top of a mountain and flooding a mountain? Usually water goes downward. Unfortunately, for people in North Carolina, because they were living in the mountains, they didn't have, a lot of them didn't have flood insurance. And unfortunately, and this is very sad, a lot of them lost their homes. Okay, and they haven't any sort of help, because you know how wonderful your Willy Wonka is. You know, they like to give money to Ukraine, because you know the Daros are living there, fat off the hog, and they like to give it to Israel. You know, and Israel's using it to go to war with Lebanon and Syria and Gaza and you know who else. But it's amazing to me that you still cape for a country, you still cape for a cosplaying man, he, she, Mr. Kamala. You cape for a person who comes from a party that has allowed sleeper cells to come all in your country, okay? Because you think it's your country still. This is what I'm talking about. You're under mind control. You're under some form of like you're suffering from Stockholm syndrome. You're caping for a cosplaying brown woman who was part of the party that allowed 20 plus million immigrants to come in. And not only just immigrants, you've allowed them to come in and get more rights than you have, and they can't even give a pot to piss in for people in North Carolina. Okay, I'm just saying, y'all. It's not me, because I already know who these beings are. I know who they are in the simulation. These are NPCs, like high playing NPCs that are, you know, geoengineering these conditions and these events to draw in more loosh and to drive the collective mad. Okay. So that being said, it's important for everyone to realize that that storm, even though the pole shift is very real, that is not part of the pole shift. The pole shift is a natural occurrence that happens during reset every single time. It's a cylindrical pattern that happens in the simulation. It's part of the agenda of the simulation. But you've got these weirdo NPCs that are lifetime loopers. They're not leaving. They don't want to leave here because outside of the simulation, they're losers. Okay, they have they're probably, you know, very low ranking people outside of the simulation, and in this simulation they rank higher. They're like celebrities, superstars. They're being worshipped by you. These are lifetime loopers. They're not leaving. They're not leaving. So they want to create more chaos. They've been here for a while. They're lifetime loopers. They're not NPCs necessarily, but they use the NPCs to work in agenda to what they know is going to happen. They've been here so long, and they've been here through a couple of the pole shifts. So they know how to drive more insanity during this time. Okay? So now you have a whole town that has been totally devastated. Your Willy Wonka system can utilize now the place where people are where they no longer have their homes, and also all these wonderful immigrants that they have allowed in what you thought it was your country. And I've already told you that your country has been sold. It was bankrupt. It is no longer United States of America. It is some sort of Chinese name. I haven't found the Mandarin name. No one's told me yet. India and China and Xinhua own your country, your previous country. It is bankrupt. It is no longer your country. Okay. I know that's very hard for you to accept. I think you should leave it, because you're just going to experience more chaos and more diabolicalness in the next couple months. But if you want to stay and, you know, play with the shenanigans, it's a video game. Maybe you're just bored and you want to play. Maybe you just want to play a little bit. Maybe you want to play cops and robbers. I don't know. Okay. But if you stay, you know you're going to deal with some shenanigans, because they have to give you a reason to think that the country's been taken over by others, even though it already was years ago. Okay, so it's very important for you to realize that this geoengineered weather, there's another storm coming. And part of the storm wasn't just to possibly harvest the lithium under North Carolina. I've told you before that the geoengineered mosquitoes of mass destruction, which is a bioweapon, which is carrying a plague that already showed up. And I told you they may show up as encephalitis. It may show up as something else with brain swelling. It's already showing up. Okay, allegedly. This is untrue. I'm a maniac. I'm crazy. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? It's already showing up. So I already told you that the next pandemic was coming, allegedly, fake news, okay? And that it would show up as brain. And this I got it from the tall white alien, Rudolph himself. He had denoted that that would be the next one and this would be the real one. Okay. So the reason why they brought all that water all to the southwest, to the western, to all of the east coast is to inundate it with lots of water. So you have fungus and spores going all up in the sky, which most likely has been seeded by those chemicals in the explosions. Now, I know I'm going all over the place, but let me say this. Not only does that moisture carry the pathogens of, because if you lived in Florida, I lived in Florida for many years. Many of you know I don't live in Florida anymore. But when I lived in Florida, any storms that came, if people had storm damage, usually they would have like black mold in their house, especially if the water came in and went in. That's one of the things you would have to get specialists to come in to remove the black mold, because as soon as the water recedes, all this mold will collect, and then you have spores of mass destruction. And spores can cause a host of health issues, which I don't have to say. That's all in data that you can absolutely get online. Okay, so that being said, I've talked about the spores of mass destruction, but also the host of mosquitoes that can be used seeded with a bioweapon. Okay. And that is 2-par. There was 2 and 3-par, while they were also going to utilize this geoengineered storm to not only, clear the land like they did in New Orleans to get the Negroes out of the areas that they wanted to take over, and, get them out of the area so that they could take over those land masses. The same thing with the fires in Maui and Lahaina, where they made sure they had the fires and made sure that people weren't able to get home to take care of the fires.